The coffee caught the light from the crystal chandelier as it arced through the air, a $50 espresso transformed into a weapon. Steam rose from the liquid like smoke from a battlefield. Time stretched thin the way it does in the moment before impact, when the world narrows to a single point and everything else falls away into silence. Sarah Chen's face registered the heat before the pain. Her eyes closed reflexively, but not fast enough. The scalding liquid found skin, found the delicate tissue around her eyes, found the places where the body is most vulnerable. She didn't scream. Years of working 3 jobs had taught her not to give men like this the satisfaction. William Harrington III adjusted his Tom Ford cuffs, a gesture so casual it bordered on obscene. The dining room at Le Chateau held 80 witnesses, each frozen in their seats like actors who'd forgotten their lines. Crystal clinked against china. Someone's fork clattered to the floor. The sound echoed in the sudden vacuum of collective held breath. His voice carried across the silence, pitched just loud enough for the room to hear, but maintaining that peculiar upper Highland Park drawl that turned cruelty into dinner conversation. There, now you smell less like poverty. The small figure in the doorway wore a marine jacket 3 sizes too large, the sleeves rolled up to reveal thin wrists. Emma Chen's eyes were the color of strong coffee, wide and uncomprehending. She'd been coloring at the back table, drawing knights on horseback, with her broken crayons waiting for her mother to finish the shift that would pay for tomorrow's medicine. Mommy, the word came out small and lost a single syllable, carrying the weight of a 7-year-old's entire world beginning to crack. 6 hours earlier, the morning had tasted like burnt cinnamon toast. The Chen apartment occupied the kind of building developers called transitional, which meant roaches and water stains, but also meant affordable if you stretch the definition. Medical bills covered the kitchen table like fallen leaves, each one a small paper monument to the body's capacity for betrayal. An eviction notice clung to the refrigerator door, held by a magnet shaped like Texas. Sarah bent over the sink, coughing into her palm. Red spattered against white porcelain. She ran the water quickly, hiding the evidence before Emma could see. The girl stood at the counter, determined focus written across her small face as she scraped carbon off bread and dumped cinnamon with the abandon of someone who believed more of everything made it better. Made it Dad's way. Emma's voice carried that particular brightness children use when they're trying very hard to be helpful. Cinnamon hides all mistakes. The toast smelled like memory and ash. Sarah's hand trembled as she touched her daughter's cheek, feeling the warmth there, the aliveness. Her wedding ring caught the morning light gold, worn thin by years of hand-washing dishes, wiping tables carrying weight. Baby, I need you to be brave today, really brave. Emma looked up, still holding the cinnamon shaker like a talisman. How brave? Remember what Daddy said, fear just means you're doing something important. The words hung in the kitchen air, another inheritance from a man who'd shipped out to Afghanistan and returned in a flag-draped box. Emma nodded slowly, the way children do when they understand more than they should have to. Sarah wondered, not for the first time, what it cost a 7-year-old to carry around that much dead father wisdom. Across town, Marcus Cole bled onto a wrench. The Iron Brotherhood clubhouse occupied a corner lot in Oak Cliff that real estate agents pretended didn't exist. The building had been a garage once before, that a warehouse before that, probably something else. History layered itself in these places, accumulating like sediment. Inside the open bay, a 1972 Harley-Davidson Electroglide stood partially disassembled, chrome and steel catching the slant of morning sun. Thunder's knuckles had split sometime in the last hour. He couldn't remember when. The work demanded attention, required focus, gave him somewhere to put his hands, while his mind ran its familiar circuits of guilt and memory. Blood mixed with grease until he couldn't distinguish which was which, and maybe that was the point. The red bandana tied to the handlebars fluttered in the breeze from the industrial fan. Faded fabric, the color of old wounds. His fingers found it, without thinking, a compulsion that had outlived reason by 40 years. Danny Park's prosthetic clicked against concrete as he crossed the garage floor. Thunder. It's been 40 years. You can't keep bleeding for her. The words were gentle, which somehow made them worse. Thunder kept his eyes on the carburetor, hands steady despite everything. Amy would be 42 today. The math never changed. Birthday math, death math, the arithmetic of loss that some men carried like other men carried wallets. March 15th, 1985 to March 15th, 2025. 40 years of subtracting a life that never got the chance to finish adding itself up. You going to that charity thing at Le Chateau tonight? Not my kind of people. Danny's laugh was short and sharp. Your kind is anyone who needs help. That's the code. Thunder's hand stilled on the red bandana. Something shifted in his peripheral vision, the way it does when the universe is about to demand payment on an old debt. He looked up at his oldest friend at the prosthetic leg that told its own story about Fallujah and the things men sacrifice, and felt the weight of the day settling into his bones. Maybe you're right. 8 miles north, William Harrington stared at his dead brother's portrait. The oil painting dominated the executive office wall larger than life because death demands that kind of memorial. Captain David Harrington in dress blues, the artist capturing something in the eyes that photographs missed belief maybe? Or the particular kind of courage that comes from not knowing what's coming. The gold watch on William's wrist ticked with mechanical precision. Tick, tick, tick. David's watch, rescued from a forward operating base in Helmand Province, after an IED turned a supply convoy into scattered metal and memory. The army had shipped it home in a plastic bag with his brother's other effects, the crystal cracked, but the movement still keeping perfect time. His secretary appeared in the doorway, hesitant in the way people are when they know the answer isn't going to be yes. Sir, the restaurant called. Your table's ready at 8. Good, I need to be seen. Investors are watching. She didn't leave. Her fingers worried the edge of her tablet. Sir, there's a problem. The medical equipment contract. The hospitals are saying the ventilators don't work. William's jaw tightened. He turned from his brother's painted face to the living woman who dared to bring him problems instead of solutions. Not my problem. They signed the contract. The words came out cold automatic. The tone he'd perfected over 20 years of building an empire on the principle that weakness was contagious and mercy was just weakness with better publicity. David had died being a hero, had bled out in Afghan dust for people who would never know his name, and what had it gotten him? A folded flag and a broken watch. William had learned. Power meant never having to apologize, never having to explain, never having to care about the casualties accumulating in your wake. Every man faces 2 deaths, the body and the reputation. David had lost both. William was determined to make himself so untouchable that neither could find him. The afternoon burned itself out in the usual Dallas way, sun hammering down on concrete and glass until the city shimmered with heat mirages that made everything look unreal. Sarah moved through her shift at Le Chateau with the mechanical efficiency of someone who'd learned to ignore pain. Her hands shook slightly as she balanced trays, carried plates, smiled at customers who looked through her like she was made of air. Emma sat at the back table near the kitchen door, the spot where staff children were tolerated as long as they stayed quiet and invisible. Her crayons marched across paper in careful lines. She drew warriors on horses, knights with swords, heroes from the stories her father used to tell before he became past tense. The drawings were elaborate for a 7-year-old, detailed in the way that comes from spending too much time alone with your imagination. The restaurant hummed with the particular energy of expensive places where the cost of a meal could pay someone's rent, and nobody thought that was strange. Servers glided between tables. Sommeliers discussed vintage years. The kitchen sent out plates that looked like art installations. Everything choreographed, everything precise. Sarah delivered a water glass to table 7. Her hand trembled exhaustion, or the thing growing in her lungs, or just the accumulated weight of being 41 years old and running out of options. A single drop spilled onto the tablecloth. William Harrington looked up from his phone. The drop sat there on white linen like an accusation. Incompetent. This is why some people stay poor. His voice carried. It was meant to. The tables nearby went quiet, conversation dying like candles in wind. Sarah's face flushed, but she said nothing. What was there to say? Men like this owned the world. Women like her just cleaned it. Emma watched from her table. Too young to understand the economics of humiliation, but old enough to recognize her mother's shame. The crayon in her hand pressed harder against the paper, snapping the tip. In the parking lot, Thunder sat on his bike and tried to convince himself to leave. The Harley idled beneath him, engine rumbling like a contented animal. His wallet lay open on the gas tank, the photo visible in the fading light. Amy, at 16, frozen in Kodachrome, smiling at a camera in a future that would never arrive. Braces on her teeth, band t-shirt, the whole world ahead of her and no idea what was coming. I'm sorry, baby girl. Every day I'm sorry. The words were ritual by now, worn smooth by repetition. 40 years of apologizing to a ghost, to memory, to the universe that had taken her and left him. His thumb touched the photo's edge, the gesture automatic as breathing. He'd promised to protect her. That was what fathers did. But he'd served 3 tours in Vietnam, had survived firefights and ambushes, and nights when the jungle tried to swallow him whole, only to lose his daughter to a drunk driver on a Tuesday night in suburban Dallas. What good was a warrior who couldn't protect the one person who mattered most? The red bandana on his wrist caught the last rays of sun. Amy's favorite color. He'd tied it around his arm after the funeral and never taken it off. Some men wore wedding rings. Thunder wore his failure. He was about to start the engine, about to ride away from the charity dinner, and the kind of people who attended charity dinners when the restaurant doors burst open. Inside Le Chateau, time had begun moving in the wrong direction. Sarah carried the $50 espresso on a small silver tray, the cup fragile as a promise. Her hands had steadied somehow, muscle memory taking over where consciousness faltered. She approached table 7 with the focused attention of someone navigating a minefield. William Harrington didn't look up from his phone. Whatever he was watching commanded more interest than the woman serving him. His thumb scrolled. His expression remained fixed in that particular mask wealthy men wear when they're pretending the help doesn't exist. Sarah set the cup down carefully, both hands on the tray to keep it steady. The espresso steamed, fragrant and dark. She was turning to leave when she noticed the angle of his phone. The camera was aimed upward. The screen showed fabric skin, the underside of her skirt. Her brain took a moment to process what her eyes were seeing. He wasn't scrolling through something. He was recording. Had been recording every server who approached the phone positioned just so beneath the table's edge. Her hand moved before her mind caught up. The water pitcher she'd been holding tipped, ice water cascading down onto the white tablecloth, onto his lap, onto the phone in his hand. He jerked upright, coffee-colored eyes going wide with shock, then narrowing with something darker. "What the—" "I'm so sorry, sir." Sarah's voice came out steady despite the adrenaline burning through her veins. It slipped, but her eyes met his, and in that moment, they both knew. She'd seen, she'd understood, and she'd acted. William stood, water dripping from his custom suit. The entire restaurant watched now, silverware suspended, conversations dead. His face had gone red, the particular crimson of powerful men confronted with the possibility that someone might have denied them something they thought they owned. He picked up the espresso cup. The gesture was almost delicate, precise in the way violence often is when it's been planned for longer than a second. "This is unacceptable." Sarah opened her mouth, but no sound came. She watched his hand move, watched the cup tilt, watched physics and malice collaborate to send $50 worth of scalding liquid directly into her face. The pain was immediate and total. Coffee found her eyes, her mouth, her throat. Her hands came up too late, defensive instincts arriving after the damage was done. The world went bright and hot and wrong. She heard screaming, her own voice, unfamiliar and animal. Somewhere far away, a child called out, "Mommy!" Sarah's knees buckled. The floor came up fast, tile cold against her cheek. She tried to breathe and couldn't. Her lungs had locked, the old asthma triggered by panic and pain. Black spots danced across her vision. Somewhere nearby, someone was calling 911. Someone else was saying, "Do something," but nobody moved. 80 people, 80 witnesses, and not one of them willing to risk William Harrington's displeasure by helping the woman convulsing on the floor. Emma dropped her crayons. The paper with its careful drawings of warriors fluttered to the ground. She ran across the dining room, small legs pumping, the oversized marine jacket flapping around her like broken wings. "Mommy, Mommy." But Sarah's eyes had rolled back. Foam appeared at the corner of her mouth. The coffee burn had triggered something worse, cardiac event, seizure, the body's emergency systems all firing at once. Tom, the restaurant manager, knelt beside her, but his hands hovered uselessly. "Someone call an ambulance. Someone—" Emma looked around at the frozen faces, at the adults who should have been helping but instead just stared. Fear washed over her, cold and total. This couldn't be happening. Her mother couldn't be dying on a restaurant floor while knights in expensive suits did nothing. She turned and ran. The parking lot air hit her like a slap. Cars gleamed in neat rows, expensive metal reflecting the dying light. Emma's vision blurred with tears, but she kept running, legs moving on pure instinct. She needed help. She needed someone who cared more about her mother than about making a billionaire angry. The rumble of the motorcycle engine reached her first. Then she saw him, an old man sitting on a bike that looked like something from one of her picture books. Leather vest, gray beard, a scar running down his face like a map of violence survived. She didn't think. Thinking would have stopped her. Thinking would have remembered all the lessons about stranger danger, about not talking to bikers, about staying safe. But safety had just thrown coffee in her mother's face and left her dying on cold tile. Emma crashed into Thunder like a wave hitting rock. Her small hands grabbed fistfuls of his leather vest. Tears and snot ran down her face. Words tumbled out in gasps. "Please, my mommy." The bad man hurt her. "Nobody will help." Marcus Cole looked down at the child in his arms and saw 40 years collapse into a single moment. The oversized jacket, the desperate eyes, the absolute faith that somehow, against all evidence, adults could fix things. He saw Amy. Not literally this girl was Asian where Amy had been white, younger where Amy had been 16, alive where Amy was long dead. But grief doesn't care about details. It sees what it needs to see. And what Thunder saw was a second chance arriving 4 decades too late to save the first one, but maybe possibly just in time to mean something. He killed the engine. The sudden silence felt sacred somehow, like the moment after a prayer when you're waiting to see if God bothers to respond. Thunder swung his leg over the bike and lowered himself to one knee, bringing his scarred face level with Emma's tear-streaked one. His voice, when it came, was gentler than anyone who knew him would have thought possible. "Hey, little warrior." "What's your name?" Emma gulped air, trying to form words around sobs. Emma Chen. My daddy was a Marine too, but he's past tense now." The phrase stopped Thunder cold. Past tense. What 7-year-old talks like that? One who'd already learned too much about permanent absence, about the way people could be present one moment and erase the next, leaving nothing but words and empty jackets. Past tense. He reached up and touched the red bandana on his wrist, the gesture unconscious. "I understand that." Understanding flowed between them, the kind of recognition that doesn't need explanation. They both knew what it meant to carry dead people around. Emma in her father's jacket, Thunder in his daughter's color. "What does your mommy need?" "She needs someone to care." The words came out fierce, angry. Everyone just watched. Why doesn't anyone care? The question hit harder than she could have known. Why doesn't anyone care? Philosophy professors spent careers on that one. But Thunder had a simpler answer, the kind that came from 3 tours in Vietnam and 40 years of trying to make the math work out differently. Sometimes the world teaches children to stop trusting strangers. Sometimes strangers are all we have. He stood joints, protesting the movement, but still functional enough. His phone came out, the motion smooth, despite the blood on his knuckles. The call connected on the second ring. "Wrench, code red, Le Chateau, now. Bring everyone." Emma looked up at this massive, scarred stranger who'd just transformed from nobody into something like hope. Everyone. Inside the restaurant, Sarah had stopped seizing, but her breathing came shallow and wrong. The paramedics hadn't arrived yet. The minutes stretched out, each one feeling like hours. William Harrington had returned to his seat, adjusting his tie, ordering another espresso, as if nothing had happened. Tom knelt beside Sarah, his phone pressed to his ear, talking to the 911 dispatcher in urgent tones. "Female, early 40s, second degree, burns on face and neck, asthma attack, possible cardiac involvement." She's not responsive. Thunder pushed through the entrance doors with Emma at his side. Heads turned. The juxtaposition was stark, this weathered biker in scuffed leather and the small girl clutching his hand like a lifeline. He took in the scene with the rapid assessment of someone trained to read battlefields. Woman down, crowd standing around, management panicking. And at table 7, a man in a suit worth more than most people's cars calmly drinking coffee while his victim lay dying 15 feet away. Thunder moved to Sarah's side, his bulk displacing Tom. Combat medic training from 1969 kicked in muscle memory older than most of the people in this room. He checked her airway, her pulse the color of her lips. Someone get me ice. Wet towels. Move. The command in his voice made people jump. Suddenly the paralysis broke. Servers scrambled. Ice appeared. Towels materialized. Thunder packed the burns carefully, keeping her airway clear, monitoring the threat of her pulse. Emma knelt on the other side of her mother, small hands gripping Sarah's arm. "Mommy, I brought help." The man with the dragon on his jacket. Thunder glanced down at his vest's back patch, the Iron Brotherhood insignia, a dragon wrapped around a sword. He'd worn it so long, he forgot other people saw it fresh. "Mommy's going to be okay." He said it with more certainty than he felt, but sometimes lies were kindness, and truth was cruelty. "You did good, little warrior. Real good." The rumble started low and distant, like thunder approaching from the horizon. Then louder. Then everywhere. The windows of Le Chateau began to vibrate. Wine glasses trembled on tables. The crystal chandelier swayed prisms, catching light and scattering it across horrified faces. Motorcycles. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. People rushed to the windows. Outside, the parking lot was filling with bikes, riders pulling in from every direction. Harleys mostly, but also Triumphs and Indians and a few customs. All of them bearing the same insignia, all of them answering the call. Danny Park was first through the door, prosthetic leg clicking against marble. Then bare 6'6" of muscle and tattoos and surprising gentleness. Then 10 more, then 20. They formed a perimeter around Sarah and Emma, not threatening but absolute. A wall of leather and chrome and old men who'd decided this was where they made their stand. Emma stared up at these giants, these warriors, who'd appeared because a stranger asked them to, because a code older than she was demanded it. For the first time since the coffee hit her mother's face, she felt safe. The ambulance arrived in a cascade of red and blue light. Paramedics pushed through the crowd of bikers who parted like water to let them through. Professional assessment, quick movements, medical jargon crackling over radios. Second-degree burns over approximately 12% of body surface area. Respiratory distress, blood pressure dropping. "We need to move now." They lifted Sarah onto a gurney. Emma tried to follow, but Thunder's hand on her shoulder stopped her. "Ride with me, little warrior. We'll follow them. Your mommy needs you strong right now, not scared." Emma looked up at this man who'd materialized from nowhere to become everything. "Promise. Promise, what?" William Harrington had finally stood the chaos, penetrating whatever bubble of privilege he occupied. He adjusted his cufflinks, preparing to leave when Thunder's voice cut across the room. "Sir, I suggest you sit back down." The words were quiet, but they carried. Every biker in the room went still. Harrington turned, taking in the leather-clad army filling his favorite restaurant. His mouth opened to deliver what was undoubtedly going to be a threat involving lawyers and police and consequences. Thunder just looked at him. 40 years of Vietnam and grief and failed protection compressed into a single stare. "Or what, you'll assault me, go ahead. Prove you're exactly what society thinks you are, animals in leather." But Harrington's hand had started to shake. For the first time, doubt flickered across his face. These weren't teenagers he could intimidate. These were old warriors who'd survived worse than him and had less to lose. Emma stepped forward, still holding Thunder's hand. Her voice came out small but steady. "Mr. Thunder Daddy said the strongest warriors win without fighting. Can you do that?" The room held its breath. Thunder looked down at this child who'd just quoted wisdom to him, who'd somehow intuited that violence wasn't strength and restraint wasn't weakness. His jaw worked, decades of Marine training warring with every instinct that said men who hurt women deserved immediate correction. Finally, he nodded. "Yeah, little warrior, I can do that." He turned to Danny. "Make the call. Everyone." Harrington's arrogance returned in a rush. "What call?" Danny's smile was all teeth. "Code Black. You just declared war on the Iron Brotherhood. And we have 47 chapters across 12 states. That's about 2,000 brothers who now know your name." The words hung in the air like smoke. Harrington laughed, but the sound had gone hollow. His phone was buzzing, then buzzing again, then constantly. He pulled it out the screen, lighting up with notifications, messages, calls from numbers he recognized. His board of directors, his wife, CNN, the Dallas Morning News, his country club, his lawyer. The restaurant security footage had already gone viral. Some customer had recorded it, posted it, and now it was spreading across the internet at digital speed. The view count climbing, the comments section filling with rage, his name trending, his company's stock price dropping in real time. 2,000 motorcycles couldn't destroy him, but the truth witnessed by millions could. Thunder lifted Emma into his arms and carried her toward the door. The Brotherhood parted to let them through, then fell in behind like an honor guard. Behind them, William Harrington stood alone in his favorite restaurant, surrounded by 80 witnesses who'd finally remembered how to care, his phone buzzing, with the sound of an empire beginning to crack. Dallas Presbyterian Hospital smelled like bleach, trying to hide death. The fluorescent lights hummed their mechanical prayer, casting everything in that particular shade of institutional green that made healthy people look sick and sick people look already gone. Thunder carried Emma through the emergency room entrance, her small body rigid with fear against his chest, the oversized marine jacket creating a protective cocoon that fooled nobody. The waiting room held the usual collection of midnight emergencies: a construction worker cradling a mangled hand, an elderly woman breathing into an oxygen mask, a teenager with a gash above his eyebrow, probably a fight, probably stupid. They all looked up when the bikers walked in, 15 men in leather, filling the space like an occupying army, and then looked away just as quickly when they saw Emma's face. Sarah had arrived 3 minutes earlier, the ambulance doors slamming shut behind the gurney with the finality of a coffin lid. Thunder set Emma down carefully, keeping one massive hand on her shoulder as a nurse approached with a clipboard and an expression that said she'd seen worse, but not by much. "Are you family?" The question hung there, loaded with legal implications and insurance requirements, and all the bureaucratic machinery that decided who got to stay and who got sent away. Thunder met her eyes, his voice carrying the weight of a promise made to a 7-year-old in a parking lot. "No, ma'am, but I'm all she has right now." The nurse looked at Emma, at the way the child's small hand gripped Thunder's leather vest with white-knuckled intensity, and something in her face shifted. "Wait here. The doctor will come out when she can." They waited. Time moved differently, and hospitals stretched and compressed simultaneously, seconds dragging while hours vanished. Emma sat in an orange plastic chair, legs swinging above the floor, not quite reaching. She'd gone quiet, the shock settling in now that the immediate crisis had passed. Thunder sat beside her, his scarred hands folded in his lap, the red bandana on his wrist, a splash of color against all that institutional white. Wrench appeared with coffee and foam cups, the kind that burned your hands and tasted like despair. "Thunder. Ghost is outside with the laptops. He's tracking the video." "How bad?" 500,000 views in the first hour. It's on Twitter, Facebook. Some kid posted it to TikTok, and it's already got 2 million there. Wrench's voice dropped lower. Her face thunder. "When the coffee hits, and the little girl screaming. People are losing their minds." Thunder's jaw tightened. He'd seen viral moments before, the way digital age turned human suffering into content, tragedy into trending topics. But this felt different. This felt like something that might actually matter. "Doctor." Martinez emerged through the double doors at 11:47 p.m., her scrubs marked with sweat and the particular exhaustion that comes from fighting battles you're not sure you can win. She scanned the waiting room, eyes landing on Thunder and Emma, with the weary recognition of someone who'd learned to read situations quickly. "Are you Emma?" The child nodded, small and lost in her dead father's jacket. Dr. Martinez knelt, bringing herself to Emma's eye level, the way Thunder had, the way anyone with sense did when talking to the genuinely frightened. "Your mom is very sick, sweetheart. The burn itself isn't the worst part. It's what the burn triggered. Her asthma, her heart, everything got scared at once and started fighting each other instead of working together." Emma's voice came out barely above a whisper. "Is she going to die?" The doctor's pause lasted 3 seconds too long. "We're going to try very hard to make sure she doesn't, but she needs surgery. Emergency surgery. The infection from the burn is spreading, and her heart, we need to operate within the next 6 hours or we'll lose her." Thunder stood, his bulk casting a shadow across both of them. "What's the cost?" De Martinez's eyes went sympathetic and hard simultaneously. With her pre-existing conditions, the cardiac involvement, The ICU time, we're looking at $180,000. Minimum. The number landed like a physical blow. Emma's face went white. Her lips moved, forming words that wouldn't quite emerge. Finally, she managed, "We only have $200. That's for medicine, not surgery." The mathematics of American healthcare, brutal and simple. 200 versus 180,000. The value of a life calculated in increments too vast for a child to comprehend, but small enough for men with William Harrington's money to spend on watches. Thunder pulled out his phone, fingers moving across the screen with surprising dexterity for hands that size. "Doctor, start the prep. The money will be there." "Sir, I can't authorize surgery without payment arrangements." "The money will be there." Each word came out carved from stone. "Start the prep." Something in his voice made argument impossible. Sir Martinez nodded, slowly standing. "I'll talk to administration, but I need confirmation within 2 hours or you'll have it in one." The doctor disappeared back through the double doors. Emma looked up at Thunder with eyes that held too much understanding for 7 years. "We don't have that much money." "Nobody has that much money except bad people like the man who hurt Mommy." Thunder knelt again, his scarred face level with hers, the scar tissue pulling tight as he spoke. "Emma, look at me. Your mom is going to get that surgery." "How? Because sometimes the world has people in it who help. Not because they have to, because it's right." He pulled the red bandana from his wrist, the fabric worn soft with age and grief. "This belonged to someone I loved, someone I couldn't protect. But I can protect your mom, and I can protect you. That's a promise." The child's hand reached out, touching the faded fabric with reverence. "Like my daddy's jacket. Just like that. We carry people with us, the ones we loved, the ones we lost, and we try like hell to save the ones still here." Outside in the parking lot, the Brotherhood had transformed the hospital's loading zone into a war room. Laptops balanced on motorcycle seats. Phones glowed in the darkness. Ghost 35 and skeletal, his fingers flying across keyboards with the manic energy of someone who lived more online than off, looked up as Thunder approached. "Thunder, you need to see this." The video played on 3 screens simultaneously. Different angles, different uploads, but all showing the same moment. William Harrington standing, Sarah's face registering the heat, the coffee arcing through crystal chandelier light. The moment of impact. The scream. The view counts rolled upward like slot machine numbers hitting jackpot. 500,000, 600,000, 7. The comments section had become a river of rage. "Who is this monster? Someone find out where he works. That little girl's face is breaking my heart. Billionaires think they can do whatever they want." Ghost's fingers never stopped moving. "I've got his identity. William Harrington III, CEO of Harrington Medical Equipment, net worth estimated at $400 million, lives in Highland Park, married to Catherine Harrington, 1 daughter away at college." "What else?" "This is where it gets interesting." Ghost pulled up a new window. His company sold ventilators to hospitals across Texas. Budget models, except they're not budget, they're defective. I'm finding complaints, lawsuits, incident reports that got buried. Equipment failures. People died. Thunder, 17 confirmed so far, probably more. The number sat heavy in the night air. 17 dead from faulty equipment. And now he'd attacked a waitress for spilling water. The pattern was clear to anyone who'd learned to read violence. This wasn't a one-time loss of control. This was character revealing itself. Bear spoke up from his position by the hospital entrance, his massive frame making the doorway look small. "Thunder, I got word from the chapters. They're asking what we need. We need $180,000 by dawn." The silence that followed wasn't doubt, it was calculation. 47 chapters, 2,000 brothers. That was $90 per person if everyone kicked in. Possible, but not easy. Most of these men lived on disability checks and mechanic wages. They weren't rich. They were barely getting by. Wrench broke the silence. "Thunder, even if we all empty our pockets, that's maybe 20, 30,000. We're still short by Puem. Then we go public." Thunder's voice cut through objections. "Go set up a GoFundMe. Title it Emergency Medical Fund for Assault Victim. Tell the story, show the video, ask for help." How much should I ask for 200,000? We need cushion for complications for recovery for Emma when her mom can't work. Thunder looked at the screens, at Sarah's frozen face in that moment before pain. And goes find everything on Harrington, every business deal, every contract, every lawsuit. If he's got skeletons, we're digging them up. Ghost's smile was feral. Already on it. The GoFundMe went live at 12:14 a.m. Within 3 minutes, the first donation came through. $20 from someone in Ohio with the username VietnamVet71. The comments attached read simply, "For the Brotherhood." Then more. $50 from California, 100 from New York, 25 from Montana. The donations rolled in, gathering momentum, the number climbing with the kind of organic velocity that social media makes possible when collective rage finds a constructive outlet. Inside the hospital, Emma had fallen asleep in Thunder's arms, exhaustion, finally overwhelming fear. He held her carefully, this small warrior who trusted a stranger because strangers were all she had, and felt the weight of 40 years of failure pressing down. Amy had been older when she died, but that didn't matter. Dead was dead, gone was gone. The hole they left was the same size regardless, but this one he could save. Both of them, mother and daughter. Redemption didn't erase the past, but maybe it could give the present a different shape. His phone vibrated, a text from Ghost. Funds at $47,000, donations from all 50 states. You should see the comments. Thunder shifted Emma, gently pulling up the GoFundMe page on his phone. The comments section had become a revival meeting. People sharing their own stories of being treated like garbage by the wealthy, of working service jobs, and being invisible, of watching their loved ones suffer because healthcare costs more than houses. My sister waited tables for 20 years. This could have been her. I was in Desert Storm. We fought for this country. This is how it treats its heroes' families. That little girl's face will haunt me forever, sending what I can. The donations kept coming. $10, $500, $25, $1,000. Each one a small act of defiance against a system that said Sarah Chen's life was worth less than William Harrington's evening entertainment. Dart Martinez returned at 1:30 a.m., her expression cautious hope mixed with disbelief. Administration is seeing the GoFundMe. They're willing to start prep if you can guarantee $75,000 by 6 a.m. We'll have it by 4. How can you possibly? Thunder turned the phone screen to show her. The number had hit 63,000. As they watched, it ticked up to 64, then 65. The avalanche had started, and gravity was doing its work. Across town, William Harrington's phone wouldn't stop screaming. The Highland Park mansion had never felt larger or more empty. Catherine had left 3 hours ago, her silence more damning than any accusation. His daughter Sarah, named for his mother, the irony wasn't lost, had sent a single text. "Dad, what did you do?" He'd tried calling his lawyer, his publicist, his CFO. None of them answered. The board had sent an email at midnight, 5 sentences that ended his career. Emergency meeting scheduled for 8 a.m. Your attendance is mandatory. Do not speak to press. Do not leave the city. Legal counsel will be present. The video had been viewed 17 million times. His face was now a meme. Someone had made a GIF of the coffee throw, added the caption, "When rich people show their true colors," and it was everywhere. Twitter, Reddit, Instagram, even LinkedIn, which somehow made it worse. But the worst part, the thing that made his chest tight and his hands shake, was the other video Ghost had uncovered and posted at 2 a.m. Security footage from Le Chateau, but from a different angle, showing the moment before the water spilled, showing William's phone positioned just so beneath the table, showing the upward angle, showing exactly what he'd been doing. The comments on that one were darker, angrier, people calling for his arrest, for his company to be destroyed, for him to lose everything. William sat in his dead brother's study, surrounded by David's medals and commendations and photographs from Afghanistan. David smiling with his unit. David shaking hands with a local elder. David in dress blues at some formal event, looking every inch the hero he'd believed himself to be. Their father's pistol sat in the desk drawer. William had found it after the old man died, cleaned and oiled. It kept it as some kind of inheritance. Now he pulled it out, the weight of it cold and final in his hand. David had died a hero. William was dying a villain. The math seemed clean. His phone lit up with a new notification. An article from the Dallas Morning News. Harrington Medical Equipment, a pattern of negligence. The reporter had found the ventilator complaints, had interviewed families of patients who'd died, had connected dots William had spent millions keeping separate. 17 confirmed deaths. Could be more. Equipment that failed because he'd cut corners to increase profit margins. People who died gasping for air because machines designed to save them had been built too cheaply to work. And he'd attacked a waitress for trying to stop him from taking upskirt photos. The gun felt heavier, or maybe lighter. Hard to tell which. A knock on the study door made him jump. He shoved the pistol back in the drawer as Catherine walked in, her face makeup streaked and exhausted. Don't, her voice was flat. Don't you dare take the easy one out and leave me to clean up your mess. Catherine, no, you don't get to talk. You get to listen. She sat down across from him, the desk that had been his father's and then David's, and finally his, creating a chasm between them. I called Jenny Rodriguez tonight. Do you remember her? The name sparked nothing. William's face must have shown it. Of course you don't. She waited tables at the Grove in 2018. You did the same thing to her. The phone under the table. She complained to management. You got her fired. She lost her apartment, had to move back to El Paso with her parents. The words landed like body blows. I never. There are 17 women, William, 17 that I found in 3 hours. How many more are there? How many women did you victimize while I was raising our daughter and pretending not to notice? The silence stretched. Outside, Dallas slept, unaware that morning would bring a reckoning. William's empire was crumbling in real time, built on sand and cruelty, finally exposed to weather it couldn't survive. David would be ashamed of you. Those 5 words hurt worse than anything else. Catherine stood, moving toward the door, then paused. That little girl in the video, she's 7 years old. The same age Sarah was when you took her to Disney World and promised you'd always protect her. That's someone's daughter, William. Someone's entire world, and you threw coffee in her mother's face while she watched. She left. The study door closed with a click that sounded like a period at the end of a sentence. William opened the drawer again, looked at the gun, thought about easy exits and hard consequences. Thought about David, who'd died trying to save people, and himself, who'd killed people trying to save money. The mathematics didn't balance. They never would. At the hospital, Thunder's phone buzzed at 3:47 a.m. The GoFundMe had hit $200,000. The donations were still coming flooding in from around the world now. Australia, Germany, Japan. The story had transcended borders, become universal. Dr. Martinez looked at the screen when Thunder showed her, and something in her professional composure cracked. I've never seen anything like this. People are good. Thunder's voice was rough with exhaustion and something close to faith. They just need reminded sometimes. Emma woke as the sky outside started showing the first gray hints of dawn. She looked up at Thunder's sleep, confused, then remembered everything in a rush that showed on her face. Mommy. Surgery starting in 30 minutes, the best doctors, the best equipment, everything she needs. Because of you. Because of everyone. 200,000 people who decided your mom mattered. He showed her the screen, the donation counter still climbing. That's what Brotherhood means. Not just bikers. Everyone who sees someone who needs help and decides to be the person who shows up. Emma's fingers traced the numbers on the screen, too many zeros for her to fully comprehend. Her voice came out small and wondering. That many people care about Mommy. That many people care about making sure bad things don't win. The surgery began at 4:15 a.m., Dr. Martinez leading a team of 5 into an operating theater that cost more per hour than Sarah made in a month. Thunder stayed in the waiting room with Emma, her small body curled against his side, watching cartoons on his phone, while her mother's life hung in the balance somewhere beyond those double doors. Ghost appeared at 5:30 with news and coffee. Thunder, Detective Santos wants to talk to you. Says she's investigating the assault. Detective Maria Santos was 40 years old and carried herself like someone who'd learned not to trust easy answers. She wore jeans and a blazer, her badge clipped to her belt, her expression neutral in the way cops learn to keep their faces when they're still deciding which side they're on. Mr. Cole, I'm Detective Santos, Dallas PD. I need to ask you some questions about last night. Thunder gently shifted Emma to Wrench's lap, the child protesting sleepily before settling. He stood all 6'2" of scarred veteran and met the detective's eyes. Ask. You organized a response to Mr. Harrington's assault. 200 motorcycles surrounded a private restaurant. That could be considered intimidation. We parked on public streets, exercised our right to peaceful assembly, didn't threaten anyone. You had 2,000 members of your organization gathering information on a private citizen. That could be considered stalking. We observed public information. Everything we found was already available. We just collected it. Santos's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. You also set up a fundraising campaign that's now raised $250,000. That kind of money moving that fast raises questions. Thunder crossed his arms. Questions about people helping someone who was attacked. That seems like the wrong questions, Detective. Maybe. Santos pulled out her phone, showing him something on the screen. I've been watching the videos, all of them, including the one your tech guy posted at 2 a.m. showing Harrington's phone under the table. We didn't take that footage. Security cameras did. But you distributed it. You made sure it went viral. She paused, watching his face. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm saying it's complicated. Thunder kept his voice level. Detective, that man threw scalding liquid in a woman's face while her child watched. He did it to cover up the fact that he was taking upskirt photos of his servers. He's been doing it for years. And he owns medical equipment that's killed 17 people because he cut corners for profit. What part of that is complicated? Santos was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I'm a veteran too, Army Iraq. I know what brotherhood means, but I also have to enforce the law even when the law protects people who deserve worse. Then enforce it, arrest him, charge him with assault, with harassment, with whatever applies to someone who thinks money makes him immune to consequences. I intend to. Santos pocketed her phone. But I needed to make sure your organization wasn't planning to take justice into your own hands. We're not judge, jury, or executioners, Detective. We're just people who show up when someone needs help. Thunder glanced back at Emma, still drowsing in Wrench's arms. That little girl needed help, so we helped. Santos followed his gaze, her expression softening almost imperceptibly. For what it's worth, Mr. Cole, I'm glad you were there. But stay within the law. I can't protect you if you don't. She left. Thunder returned to his seat as Emma climbed back into his lap, seeking the security of his presence. The waiting room TV was showing the News Now morning anchors discussing the viral video, showing aerial footage of the Brotherhood's response, interviewing sociologists about class warfare, and service workers about their own experiences of being invisible. The surgery lasted 6 hours. Emma fell asleep again, woke, ate crackers from a vending machine colored on paper a nurse provided, and fell asleep once more. Thunder didn't move except to shift position when his legs went numb. This child who trusted him, creating a weight that was both burden and blessing. Dr. Martinez emerged at 10:23 a.m., her scrubs fresh, her face showing the particular exhaustion of someone who just fought death and won. She made it. The surgery was successful. She's in recovery now. Emma jerked awake at the words, her face transforming. Mommy's okay. Your mommy's okay. She'll need time to heal, and there will be physical therapy, but she's going to live. Dr. Martinez knelt down, repeating the gesture Thunder had taught them all. You were very brave, Emma. Mr. Thunder was brave. I just got help. Sometimes getting help is the bravest thing we can do. Thunder's phone buzzed, a text from Ghost. Harrington just tried to hang himself. Housekeeper found him. He's alive but hospitalized. Media is going nuclear. The news reached the waiting room TV 3 minutes later. Breaking coverage. William Harrington III, billionaire CEO, accused of assault and sexual harassment, found by his housekeeper in an apparent suicide attempt. Condition stable. No comment from family. Emma looked up at Thunder, her voice small. Is the bad man dead? No, little warrior. He's alive. Good. The certainty in her voice surprised him. Daddy used to say the dead don't learn anything. Only the living can get better. More wisdom from a man who died too young and left it behind like seeds. Thunder touched the red bandana on his wrist, thinking about Amy, about all the ways the dead taught the living about second chances arriving decades too late, but maybe just in time. The Brotherhood had saved Sarah Chen's life. They'd exposed William Harrington's crimes. They'd shown the world what happened when ordinary people decided extraordinary cruelty couldn't stand unanswered. But the war wasn't over. It was just beginning. 4 weeks after William Harrington threw coffee in her face, Sarah Chen stood in the doorway of a house she didn't own but was told to call home. The Brotherhood had insisted on this 3 bedrooms in a neighborhood where children played in yards and neighbors knew each other's names. The kind of place she'd stopped dreaming about when medical bills became a second rent payment. Emma ran past her mother's legs, the red bandana bright against her wrist, as she explored rooms that smelled like fresh paint and possibility. Thunder had arranged everything while Sarah recovered coordinating furniture donations from 12 chapters, ensuring Emma's new bedroom had a window facing east, so morning light would wake her gently. Details a father would notice. Details Sarah was learning not to question. The moving boxes were minimal. Their old apartment had held so little worth keeping, thrift store furniture, dishes that didn't match clothes worn thin by repeated washing. But Thunder's truck also carried things that mattered. Emma's drawings, her father's medals in their presentation case, the framed photo of Sarah and David on their wedding day. Small pieces of a life that had been broken and was now being carefully reassembled. Bear appeared carrying what looked like a small refrigerator. Where you want this, Sarah? You didn't have to. Stocked it already. Milk, eggs, that fancy orange juice Emma likes. Weeks worth of groceries. His massive frame filled the doorway, but his voice carried the gentleness that still surprised her. You focus on healing. We focus on everything else. This was the pattern she'd learned in recovery. The Brotherhood didn't ask permission, didn't wait for thanks. They identified needs and filled them with the efficiency of a military operation. Her hospital bills paid, Emma's school enrollment handled. Transportation, food, utilities covered by a network that operated on some code older than she'd understood, but was grateful existed. Wrench arrived next, prosthetic clicking against hardwood as he carried in boxes labeled kitchen. His weathered face split into a grin when he saw Emma. Little warrior, come see what Ghost sent. The laptop was used but functional, loaded with educational software and parental controls. A note attached in Ghost's angular handwriting, for homework and drawing programs, cloud backup included. Gee, Emma's eyes went wide. A computer for me. Ghost says you're gonna need it. Smart kid like you. Wrench knelt, bringing himself level with her in that gesture they'd all adopted from Thunder. But your mom sets the rules. Screen time, websites, all that. Deal. Deal. Emma threw her arms around his neck, and Sarah watched this dangerous-looking veteran with the prosthetic leg carefully return the embrace, saw how the hardness in his face softened around children, and felt something in her chest unclench. Thunder materialized in the kitchen, his presence filling spaces without crowding them. He'd been quieter since the city council meeting, some burden lifted, but replaced with a different weight. Sarah caught him sometimes touching her bare wrist, the phantom gesture, seeking a bandana that now lived on Emma's arm. House inspection. His voice carried command softened by care. Locks work, windows secure, smoke detectors installed, fire extinguisher under the sink, emergency numbers on the fridge. Sarah followed his gaze to the refrigerator, where he'd magnetized a laminated card police fire hospital, and below them, Thunder's cell, Wrench's cell, Brotherhood clubhouse. A hierarchy of safety that put his number before 911. You've thought of everything. Not everything, still working on it. He pulled an envelope from his vest pocket. GoFundMe, final numbers, $347,000. After medical bills and housing setup, there's $215,000 left. It's yours. The number made her dizzy. Sarah reached for the counter, steadying herself. I can't. You can and you will. It's not charity. It's 200,000 people saying your life has value. Refusing that insults every person who donated. Thunder's scarred face was implacable. Set it up for Emma's education. Use it to start that advocacy work you mentioned. Save it. Spend it. Your choice. But it's yours. Emma appeared in the doorway holding a framed photo she'd found in one of the boxes. David Chen in marine dress blues, young and alive, and unaware of the IED waiting for him in Helmand province. Mommy, can I put Daddy in my room? Sarah's throat tightened. Of course, baby. And can I tell him about the house? About Mr. Thunder and everyone? Emma's voice carried that particular 7-year-old logic that made conversations with the dead seem perfectly reasonable. He'd want to know people are helping us. Thunder's hand found his bare wrist again, the automatic gesture seeking comfort from something no longer there. His voice roughened. Your dad knows, little warrior. Warriors always know when their families are protected. The unpacking took hours. Neighbors appeared with casseroles and curiosity, the story having preceded them. Some came with genuine welcome. Others with the voyeuristic interest people have for tragedy survivors, wanting proximity to drama that wasn't theirs. Sarah learned to read faces quickly, accepting kindness and politely deflecting invasiveness. Mrs. Patterson from next door brought chocolate chip cookies and practical advice about the school district. My grandson's in Emma's grade. I'll introduce them. Then quieter, what you went through, what that man did, it matters that you're still standing. By evening, the house had transformed from empty shell to lived-in space. Emma's drawings covered her bedroom walls. The kitchen held food they hadn't scrounged for. The living room had furniture that matched, small normalcies that felt revolutionary after years of survival mode. Thunder was last to leave, checking locks one final time, his protective instincts unwilling to trust that safety could be this simple. Sarah caught his arm as he reached for the door. Why us? Why go this far for strangers? The question had been building for weeks. Thunder was silent long enough that she thought he might not answer. Then, 40 years ago, I had a daughter, Amy, 16. She snuck out to a party I'd forbidden. Drunk driver hit her on the way home. His hand moved to his bare wrist again. I spent 4 decades asking why I couldn't protect her. Then Emma crashed into me in that parking lot, and I had my answer. I couldn't save Amy, but I could save you, both of you. The grief in his voice was old but undiminished, the kind that doesn't heal but learns to coexist with living. Sarah understood that particular weight she carried David the same way, present in absence, shaping everything. The bandana Emma has that was Amy's, her favorite color. I wore it for 40 years. Thought I'd die with it on. He met Sarah's eyes. But some things aren't meant to be carried forever. Some things are meant to be passed forward. Emma needed it more than me. After he left, Sarah found Emma in her new bedroom, arranging stuffed animals Thunder had somehow known to include. The red bandana on her wrist caught lamplight, and for a moment Sarah saw the transfer clearly, one man's grief becoming another child's strength lost, transforming into legacy. Mommy, Emma's voice was small. Are we safe now? The question had layers. Safe from Harrington, safe from poverty, safe from the casual cruelty of a world that valued money over humanity. Sarah sat on the bed edge, pulled her daughter close. We're safe, baby. And more than that, we're not alone anymore. The second month brought Detective Santos to their door with news and complications. William Harrington had been released from psychiatric care, remanded to house arrest pending trial. The criminal charges were extensive assault, sexual harassment evidence, tampering, criminal negligence for the ventilator deaths. His empire had collapsed with the thoroughness that only public exposure could achieve. The board had voted him out. His wife had filed for divorce. His daughter refused his calls. The trial's set for 6 months from now. Santos sat in their living room, coffee untouched on the table between them. The DA wants your testimony. Emma's too, if you're comfortable with that. Sarah looked at her daughter, who'd been listening from the hallway despite instructions to play in her room. Emma stepped forward, the bandana a splash of red courage against her small wrist. I'll tell what I saw. The bad man needs to hear the truth. Santos's professional mask cracked slightly. You're very brave, Emma. But court is different from the city council. Defense lawyers will try to confuse you, make you doubt what you remember. I remember everything. Emma's voice carried absolute certainty. He stood up. He picked up the cup. He threw it. Mommy screamed. And nobody helped until Mr. Thunder came. That's the truth. Lawyers can't change truth. The logic was ironclad and 7 years old. Santos nodded slowly. No, they can't. But they'll from him. After the detective left, Sarah found Thunder's number on the emergency card. He answered on the first ring, engine noise in the background, suggesting he was writing. Sarah, everything okay? Harrington wants to see me. Santos said he's been requesting mediation, him and all his victims together. Voluntary supervised, part of some restorative justice program his lawyers are pushing. She paused. I don't know if I can face him. The engine noise cut out. Don't do anything you're not ready for. He doesn't deserve your presence just because he wants absolution. It's not about him. It's about, Sarah searched for words. I need to see if he's actually sorry or just sorry he got caught. Thunder was quiet for 3 breaths. If you go, you don't go alone. Brotherhood comes. Not in the room, but nearby, close enough. You do that. Sarah, we've been doing that since the night we met. Not stopping now. The mediation was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon at a community center that specialized in restorative justice. 17 women sat in a circle, ages ranging from 19 to 53, each one carrying a story about William Harrington's phone under a table, his entitled leer, his casual assumption that their bodies were his to photograph without permission. Sarah knew some of them from the support groups that had formed after the viral video. Jenny Rodriguez, who'd been fired for complaining. Melissa Kim, whose restaurant manager had taken Harrington's side. Patricia White, who'd quit the service industry entirely rather than risk another encounter. The facilitator explained rules. Harrington would listen. He could respond, but not defend. The goal wasn't punishment, but understanding. Some of the women's faces showed skepticism. Others just looked tired. Then Harrington entered and the room's energy shifted. He looked diminished, the arrogance that had defined him replaced by something hollower. Weight loss made his expensive suit hang wrong. The carefully cultivated power broker appearance had given way to someone who'd stopped caring about surfaces. He sat in the designated chair, hands folded in his lap, and didn't speak until the facilitator nodded permission. I don't know how to start except to say I'm sorry, which is inadequate, which insults you by suggesting words could undo what I did. His voice shook. I photographed you without consent. I made you feel unsafe in your workplace. When you caught me, I attacked you. Some of you I got fired. Some of you I've never met but heard anyway because my company sold equipment that killed their patients. Jenny Rodriguez leaned forward. Why you're a billionaire? You could have any woman. Why creep shot waitresses? The question sat heavy. Harrington's hands clenched. Because I could. Because I was powerful and you weren't, and somewhere along the way I confused having power with deserving it. My brother died in Afghanistan being a hero. I built an empire to prove I was better than his sacrifice, better than the wasteful way he died serving others. I became everything he would have hated. Your brother didn't make you a predator. Patricia's voice cut sharp. That was a choice, yes. The admission came quiet but clear. It was. Every time. 1,700 photos across 6 years. 1,700 times I chose to violate someone. I can't undo that. I can't make it not have happened. All I can do is be different going forward. Sarah had been silent, but now she spoke. Different how? What does different look like for someone who did what you did? Harrington met her eyes for the first time, and Sarah saw something there she hadn't expected: genuine shame. I've liquidated most assets. Set up a fund. $2 million for each of you. It's not payment. Money can't pay for trauma, but it's acknowledgement that your suffering had value, had cost, had impact. 2 million, Melissa's voice was faint. Each, 34 million total. It won't buy back your peace, won't erase the nightmares or the hypervigilance, but it might buy you choices, therapy, education, the ability to leave service work if you want to, or start businesses, or just breathe without financial terror for a while. The room digested this. Sarah thought about the GoFundMe, about how money couldn't buy healing, but could remove obstacles to it, could transform victim into survivor by removing the daily violence of poverty. What about the families of the people who died from your equipment? Sarah pressed. The 17 deaths Ghost found. What do they get? 5 million each. And I'm turning myself in for voluntary manslaughter charges. The prosecutors don't have enough for murder, but I killed those people through negligence. That deserves consequence. Harrington's voice steadied. I'm not doing this for leniency. I'm pleading guilty regardless. I'm doing it because it's what I should have done 17 deaths ago. The facilitator called for a break. Women clustered in small groups, processing, debating, some crying. Sarah found herself near the window, watching Thunder and Bear in the parking lot, visible guardian angels waiting for any sign they were needed. Jenny approached. You believe him? I don't know. Men say a lot of things when facing consequences. Sarah touched the healing burns on her face, still tender under makeup. But money talks louder than apologies. If he actually gives us those funds, that's more believable than any speech. $2 million. Jenny said it like testing the words for reality. I could pay off my parents' house, go to school, never carry a tray again. What would you do instead? I don't know. Never let myself think that far ahead. Jenny's eyes were distant, already imagining. Maybe teach, maybe open a bookstore, maybe just exist without someone's hand on my ass being the price of rent. The afternoon ended without resolution. Harrington had spoken his piece. The women had heard it. Time would reveal whether his contrition was genuine or performance. But Sarah left with a strange feeling, not forgiveness, but the recognition that humans could choose to become different things than they'd been. Thunder was leaning against his bike when she emerged. How are you? Confused, angry, but also hopeful. Is that wrong? Nothing about how you feel is wrong. You're allowed to be all of it at once. Emma appeared from where she'd been waiting with Wrench, showing off a new card trick he'd taught her. Her small hands manipulated cards with surprising dexterity, face scrunched in concentration. When she succeeded, Bear applauded like she'd performed magic. Sarah watched her daughter surrounded by these scarred warriors, learning that men could be gentle and strong, simultaneously that protection didn't require domination. Emma was growing up with a different template than Sarah had, one where power looked like Thunder's restraint rather than Harrington's entitlement. He offered us money, $2 million each, all 17 of us. Thunder whistled low. That's real accountability, actions over words. Is it enough? Can money ever be enough? No, but it's something, and sometimes something is all justice looks like in the real world. The money came through 6 weeks later, verified by lawyers, and deposited into accounts set up for each victim. The news coverage was extensive. Billionaire makes restitution unprecedented in cases of sexual harassment. Some called it blood money. Others called it the least he could do. Sarah called it complicated and used a portion to start a nonprofit, the Chen Foundation for Service Worker Protection. Emma, now 8 years old and somehow simultaneously younger and older than her age suggested, insisted on being involved. If we're helping people like Mommy, I should help too. The foundation's mission was simple: provide legal support and emergency funds for service workers facing harassment or assault. Within the first month, they received 47 requests for help. Within 3 months, Thunder had recruited other MC chapters to provide security for victims being stalked or threatened. The network expanded, grew, became something larger than any one person had envisioned. Sarah discovered she was good at this, good at listening to stories that mirrored her own, good at connecting victims with resources, good at transforming rage into systemic change. She hired Jenny Rodriguez as operations director. Melissa Kim managed outreach. Patricia White ran the legal department. The women Harrington had victimized became the infrastructure that protected others from men like him. Harrington himself became a ghost. After pleading guilty to all charges, he was sentenced to 7 years in a minimum security facility. His request for work release was granted, unusual for someone convicted of assault, but the judge had been persuaded by the restitution and the fact that 17 victims had submitted letters supporting rehabilitation over pure punishment. Sarah had debated signing that letter. Emma had been adamant. Daddy said everyone deserves the chance to be better, even bad people. So Sarah signed, adding a caveat: supporting his chance for redemption doesn't mean forgetting what he did. It means believing change is possible while holding him accountable for making it real. The years accumulated like sediment, each one adding layers to a story that refused to end simply. Year 2 brought legal victories. The city ordinance Dallas had passed became a model for federal legislation. The Service Worker Dignity Act made upskirt photography a felony nationwide, established mandatory reporting for workplace harassment, and created federal funding for victim support services. Emma, now 9, attended the signing ceremony in Washington, D.C., sitting between Sarah and Thunder as the president praised the little girl whose courage changed America. Year 3 brought Emma's first public speech at a veterans support rally. She stood on a platform, red bandana visible, and spoke about her father's sacrifice, her mother's strength, and Thunder's example with a clarity that reduced grown men to tears. The video went viral again, but this time the comments weren't about victimhood, they were about resilience. Year 4 brought Harrington's release from prison. He'd served 4 years of the 7-year sentence, time reduced for exemplary behavior, and completion of extensive therapy. He emerged to a world that hadn't forgotten him, but was willing to watch and see. He moved into a modest apartment, took a job at a veterans center, doing intake and administrative work, and kept his head down. Year 5 brought the first time Emma saw Harrington since the coffee. It was accidental. She'd been volunteering at the same veterans center where he worked, helping file paperwork and talk to families. She'd turned a corner, and there he was, thinner, grayer, wearing a name tag that said Will instead of William Harrington III. They stared at each other. Emma was 12 now, no longer the small child from the restaurant, but not yet the woman she'd become. The bandana was still on her wrist, faded further but present. Harrington opened his mouth closed. It tried again. Emma, I didn't know you volunteered here. Started last month. Her voice was steady. Mr. Thunder said veterans need young people to care. So I care. That's good. That's important work. He seemed unsure whether to stay or flee. How's your mother? She's good. The foundation helped 230 families last year. We're expanding. Emma studied him with eyes too old for 12. Are you actually sorry? Or did you just not want to go to jail longer? The bluntness was pure, Emma, no social niceties, just truth demanded. Harrington's face worked through several emotions before settling on something like honesty. Both. At first it was just fear. Fear of prison, of losing everything, of being hated. But spending 4 years with veterans, hearing their stories, understanding what real service looks like, he gestured at the center around them. These men sacrificed everything. My brother sacrificed everything. You and your mother nearly sacrificed everything because of my cruelty. I can't undo that. But I can spend whatever time I have left trying to deserve the second chance I didn't earn. Emma considered this. Then, Mr. Thunder says redemption is measured in actions over time, not words in a moment. Are your actions good? I'm trying to make them good, showing up every day, helping where I can, staying small and useful instead of big and destructive. Then keep doing that. Emma moved past him toward the filing room, paused. I still hate what you did, but Daddy taught me that holding on to hate hurts the person holding it more than the person it's aimed at. So I'm letting go. Not for you, for me. She disappeared into the office, leaving Harrington standing in the hallway with the weight of absolution he hadn't asked for but desperately needed. The years continued their march. Emma turned 14 and won a national essay contest about forgiveness and accountability. The prize included a scholarship fund that would cover her college education completely. She gave the acceptance speech wearing her battalion's battles, the red bandana, and a leather vest Thunder had custom made with patches that read, David Chen's daughter and Amy Cole's legacy. Sarah's foundation expanded to 12 states, helping thousands of service workers annually. She met someone, a gentle man named Marcus, no relation to Thunder, though the name, coincidence, amused everyone who managed a bookstore and treated her like she was made of strength rather than damage. They married quietly, Thunder walking Sarah down the aisle in place of the father she'd lost years before. Thunder himself aged with the grace of old oaks, weathering but not weakening. At 76, he still rode daily, still showed up when called, still checked on Emma and Sarah with the devoted consistency that had become his redemption's measure. The Brotherhood had grown under his leadership, expanding their veterans support programs to include mental health services, job training, and family counseling. Amy's memory lived in every life they touched. Harrington continued his quiet penance. He'd worked at the Veterans Center for 6 years, earned his way up to senior coordinator, and established a scholarship fund for children of fallen soldiers. He lived alone in his modest apartment, his previous wealth now distributed to victims, and causes his name still synonymous with downfall, but slowly accumulating new nuance. Then came year 10. Emma turned 17 in the spring, 6 months before her high school graduation. She'd been accepted to Georgetown's School of Foreign Service, planning to major in international relations with a focus on veteran affairs. Thunder had cried when she told him, proper tears, no hiding, just joy that this child he'd saved had grown into exactly the kind of person who'd make the world less cruel. The invitation came via her foundation email. Dallas Convention Center wanted her as keynote speaker for the National Service Worker Protection Conference. 500 attendees, full media coverage for Edge. The stage where she'd first testified as a 7-year-old now offered again to the young woman she'd become. Sarah debated whether to tell Harrington about the event, ultimately deciding that information wasn't something to withhold. She called him their conversations now occasional, but no longer impossible. Well, it's Sarah Chen. Emma's speaking at the convention center next month. I thought you should know in case you wanted to avoid that area that day. His laugh was bitter. I won't be anywhere near there, Sarah. I'm not stupid enough to think I have the right to watch her triumph when I nearly destroyed the foundation it's built on. Actually, Sarah surprised herself with what came next. You could attend if you wanted. Back row, nobody would know. The silence stretched. Why would you allow that? Because Emma's speech is about redemption through action, about how people can choose to be different. It seems hypocritical to tell that story while excluding the person who's actually living it. She paused. You've done the work, Will. 10 years of it. Maybe it's time to witness what your choices, both the terrible ones and the ones trying to fix them, help create. Sarah hung up, unsure if he'd come, unsure if she'd done the right thing by inviting him. But Emma's philosophy had infected them all. Everyone deserves the chance to be better, and sometimes witnessing goodness growing from the ashes of your worst actions is the accountability that actually changes people. The convention center buzzed with energy, 500 people filling seats that had once held 80 restaurant patrons watching her mother get attacked. Emma stood backstage wearing a simple black dress, her father's medals pinned over her heart, the red bandana bright against her wrist. Thunder appeared beside her, 78 years old, but still radiating the protective presence that had defined her childhood. Nervous little warrior, terrified, Emma's honesty was one of her trademarks. What if I mess up? What if my voice cracks? What if you're exactly who you need to be? Which is who you've always been, someone brave enough to tell the truth even when it's scary. He touched her arm where the bandana lived. Amy would be proud. Your dad would be proud. I'm proud. You taught me how to be brave. No. Thunder's voice was firm. You taught yourself. I just showed up. Everything else was you. The introduction came. Emma walked onto the stage to thunderous applause, facing a crowd that included service workers who'd survived harassment, veterans supporting the cause, advocates from dozens of organizations, and scattered throughout the Brotherhood in their leather, Sarah and Marcus in the front row, Detective Santos near the middle, and in the very back row, almost invisible, William Harrington face, weathered by consequence, eyes fixed on the young woman whose life he'd nearly ended and who'd somehow become the catalyst for everything that came after. Emma gripped the podium, looked out at the sea of faces, and began. My name is Emma Chen. 10 years ago, a man threw scalding coffee in my mother's face while I watched. That same night, a stranger knelt down in a parking lot and taught me that the world contained both cruelty and courage. Everything that's happened since this foundation, these laws, this movement grew from the space between those two moments. Her voice carried steady and clear. No longer a child's pitch, but not yet fully adult, caught in that between place where conviction sounds especially true. People ask me how I forgave William Harrington. I haven't. Forgiveness isn't the same as moving forward. I can acknowledge he spent 10 years trying to become someone different while still remembering who he was. Both things are true. The man who attacked my mother exists. The man who's worked at a veterans center for 6 years also exists. Humans are large enough to contain contradictions. She caught Thunder's eye in the front row, drew strength from his presence the way she'd learned to do. My father died in Afghanistan fighting for people he'd never meet. Marcus Cole Thunder carries the grief of a daughter he couldn't save. My mother survived not just coffee burns, but a system that told her she was disposable. William Harrington destroyed lives through arrogance and rebuilt a fraction of that damage through humility. All of these truths coexist. Emma's hand moved to the bandana, the gesture unconscious now. Decades of comfort-seeking compressed into muscle memory. The question isn't whether people can change. The question is whether we're brave enough to witness that change without demanding perfection. Redemption isn't a moment. It's decades of showing up, doing the work, being useful instead of harmful. It's choosing every single day to be different than you were. She looked toward the back row, not directly at Harrington, but in his direction, and wondered if he understood this speech was as much for him as about him. 10 years ago, I was 7 years old and terrified. Today I'm 17 and still scared, but I've learned fear isn't the opposite of courage. Courage is being scared and doing the important thing anyway. Daddy taught me that. Thunder showed me how. And every service worker who stands up to harassment, every victim who reports their assault, every person who chooses to be better than their worst moment, you all prove it's true. The speech continued for 20 minutes, weaving together policy recommendations and personal testimony statistics and stories the macro and micro of how systems change when individuals refuse to stay silent. When Emma finished, the standing ovation lasted 5 full minutes. Backstage, Thunder pulled her into a hug that lifted her off the ground despite his age. That was perfect. You were perfect. I meant what I said about people containing contradictions. About you. Emma pulled back, studying his face. You couldn't save Amy, but you saved me. Both things are true. You carry them both. Getting philosophical on me, little warrior. I'm 17. It's allowed. She grinned, then sobered. He was here, in the back. I saw him. Thunder's expression went carefully neutral. How do you feel about that? Okay, I think he didn't make it about him, just witnessed. Maybe that's all anyone can do with their past witness, what it created, and keep trying to create something better going forward. They returned to the reception area where Sarah was being interviewed by reporters, where Brotherhood members were networking with other veteran organizations, where the foundation staff celebrated another successful event. Emma moved through congratulations and handshakes, years of public appearances, making her comfortable in spaces that would have terrified her younger self. She almost missed Harrington leaving. He was slipping out a side exit, trying to avoid being recognized when Emma's voice stopped him. Mr. Harrington. He turned to resignation and hope warring on his face. Emma, that speech, it was extraordinary. Thank you. She walked closer, forcing him to stay rather than flee. I meant what I said. About redemption being measured in actions over time. You've done the work. Not enough, never enough to balance. No, not enough to balance, but enough to matter, enough to prove people can choose to be different. Emma extended her hand. I don't forgive you, but I see you're trying. That counts for something. Harrington stared at her offered hand like it might be a trap. Then slowly he shook it. The gesture was brief, formal, carrying weight beyond the physical contact. 10 years of consequence compressed into a single moment of acknowledgement. Your father would be proud of who you've become. Both my fathers would be proud. Emma released his hand. Keep doing the work, Mr. Harrington. Not for applause or recognition, just because it's right. She walked away, leaving him standing in the hallway with Absolution's complicated cousin acknowledgement that efforts sustained over years eventually meant something, even if it could never mean enough. The party that night at the Brotherhood Clubhouse was loud and joyous, celebrating not just Emma's speech, but everything it represented. 10 years of work, thousands of lives changed. A movement that had started with coffee thrown in anger and transformed into systemic reform through sustained courage. Emma's childhood drawings still hung on the wall, faded now, but treasured a little girl and a dragon-wearing giant, crude but honest. Beside it, newer photos documented the decade Emma at City Council, Emma at the foundation opening, Emma receiving awards, Emma growing from child into young woman, while Thunder aged from weathered veteran into elderly guardian. Sarah found Thunder on the clubhouse's back porch, watching the Dallas skyline sparkle with nighttime promise. She joined him in comfortable silence, two people who'd survived separate hells and found unexpected family in the aftermath. She's leaving soon, Georgetown in the fall. Sarah's voice carried maternal melancholy. My baby going off to change the world on a bigger stage. She's ready, been ready for years. You raised her right. We raised her right, you, me, the Brotherhood, all of it. Takes a village, turns out. Sarah leaned against the railing. What will you do when she's gone? You've been protecting her for 10 years. Thunder's hand moved to his bare wrist, the phantom bandana still sought in moments of uncertainty. Keep riding, keep showing up. There's always someone who needs help. He smiled slightly. Maybe that was the point all along. Amy died and I spent 40 years believing I'd failed at the only thing that mattered. Then Emma crashed into me, and I learned failure isn't the end of the story. It's just the middle. Profound for a biker. Bikers contain multitudes, his tone was wry. Besides, someone's got to keep being the philosophical warrior. Emma's got college, might as well be me. They stood together watching Dallas breathe, this city that had witnessed coffee thrown and laws changed and one small girl's courage rippling outward into transformation. The scars remained. Sarah's face still bore faint burn marks. Thunder still carried Amy's absence. Emma still flinched at the sound of ceramic hitting tile, but scars were proof of survival, not symbols of defeat. Inside, Bear's laughter boomed. Ghost was probably teaching Emma some new tech trick. Wrench would be sharing war stories with the younger members, passing down wisdom earned in blood and sand. The Brotherhood continued its cycle. Old warriors teaching new ones, grief transforming into purpose, individual pain becoming collective strength. Thank you, Sarah said quietly, for everything, for showing up when nobody else would. Thunder's scarred hand found hers squeezed once. Thank you for letting me, for giving me something to show up for. The years ahead would bring new challenges. Emma would face different battles in Washington, D.C. Sarah's foundation would grow beyond anything she'd imagined. Thunder would continue aging the body, eventually failing, while the spirit remained willing. The Brotherhood would ride on because that's what warriors did. They showed up, they protected, they stood between innocent people and the world's casual cruelties. But tonight, in this moment, they celebrated what they'd built from ashes, proved that coffee thrown in anger could become coffee shared in joy, that children forced to be brave could grow into adults who chose courage, that men who thought power came from domination could learn it came from protection instead. Emma appeared in the doorway, red bandana catching light, David's medals glinting, Thunder's lessons written across her confident posture. Mom, Thunder, they're doing the toast. You coming? Inside, 50 voices raised plastic cups filled with coffee, the Brotherhood's traditional mockery of the weapon that had started everything. Bear led the chant that had become ritual to warriors who don't need to fight to prove their strength. To showing up, Wrench added. To families that choose each other, Ghost continued. Emma lifted her cup, meeting Thunder's eyes across the crowded room. To second chances, for all of us. They drank coffee, none of them throwing it, all of them understanding the power and restraint. The night deepened, stories accumulated, laughter echoed against walls that had witnessed a decade of healing. And in the quiet spaces between celebration and the pauses, when individual voices could be heard, the whisper of legacy being built was unmistakable. Emma Chen was 17 years old. In 3 months, she'd leave for Georgetown. In 4 years, she'd graduate with honors. In 10 years, she'd run for Congress and win. In 20 years, she'd author legislation that transformed how America treated service workers, veterans, and survivors of assault. But tonight, she was just a girl who'd been saved by a stranger who'd become family, standing in a room full of dragons who'd proven gentleness was stronger than cruelty. Learning that the best revenge against a world that said she didn't matter was to matter so completely that the world had to change around her. The coffee war was over. Dignity had won, and in a back alley veterans center where a man once called William Harrington III now cleaned bedpans and filed paperwork under the name Wilhelm, working his 10,000th hour of penance, while Amy Cole's legacy in red fabric around Emma Chen's wrist proved that redemption was possible for everyone willing to do the work that was victory enough.